Firstly, I want to begin B'Rshus the Meir D'Asra, Harav Lowy Shlita, who is not only the Meir D'Asra and someone that Klal Yisrael turns to, but someone that I also consider to be one of my Rabbeim. And when I have a shayla or just will ask something, Eitzah, just a moment ago I asked Harav Lowy a shayla. And so for me to speak in the presence of the Meir D'Asra Shlita is a very, very big schus. And I hope HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give the Rav and the entire Mishpacha the koyach and gesund to continue inspiring all of Klal Yisrael. I know Project Inspire at one point, I think on one of their videos they said, describe the weekend without using the word inspire. And I don't think anybody did. Or maybe a lot of people did, but it was a challenge. So I'm sorry to open up by using the word inspire, but it's not easy a few days before Rosh Hashanah to travel, to come here. I live in South Florida. But I could only imagine how difficult it must be to have to come out for an entire evening. And I am truly inspired that I am looking at hundreds of Anoshim Chashuvim and Anoshim Tzidkaniyos, that just a few days before Rosh Hashanah Tavshin Ayin Vav came out, and that to me is truly inspirational. Just the fact that the hundreds came out tonight here in Toronto on behalf of Project Inspire, as all of the flyers said, to see what could we do for a good judgment on Yom Hadin. Just from the fact that the hundreds of you came out, the Rebbeinu Shalom should grant each and every one of you, the Anoshim Chashuvim, the Noshim Tzidkaniyos, your families, to have a gebenchte gesunte Yar, and where you should experience only Yiddish and Nachas from your families and enjoy it together with your families. Your coming is truly inspiring. I am here because of Reb Leib Irons. We've had, I can't even imagine how many phone calls back and forth, the logistics, the planning, the flying, the car services, and all of the details. It's a credit to Reb Leib, and thank you very much for giving me the chance to be Mezakeh the Rabbim. And just Achron Choviv to just mention before we actually start, to speak in the presence of Reb Chaim Samson. Reb Chaim Samson is the international director of Project Inspire. He's sitting somewhere in the audience just trying to blend in and camouflage himself. Reb Chaim, that doesn't happen. Because as the international director of Project Inspire, someone who's really changing the world, helping us realize what our achrayus is, the fact that he's here tonight, and that he and Project Inspire allowed me to be here tonight, I have tremendous hakaras hatov. To Reb Chaim I say, ein milim befi lahabia rigshay levavi, to express how awesome it is to be in your presence. All of the flyers and the information that went out about tonight was how we can properly merit good judgment. We're just a few days before Rosh Hashanah. I think the words of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter to begin tonight jump at us. When Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was addressing this question, what can you do to be meritorious in judgment? Rebbeinu Shalom, we want to have a good gebenchte gesunte Yar. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says, and I quote, Ki ha'etza ha'yechida lizkos bedin. The single best piece of advice, the etza par excellence, bar none, lihiyos ish sherabim tzrichim loy. Lihiyos ish sherabim tzrichim loy. Become someone that other people need. Become someone to whom many people will say, Rebbeinu Shalom, I need him or I need her. They're indispensable to my existence. That's a quote from Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. Ki hayetza hayechida liskais badinhi liyos ish serabim tzrichim loy. The ticket is, to how many people are you indispensable? To how many people do they feel, I can't get along without that person, I need them? That, says Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, is the ticket how to Be'ezras Hashem approach the Yemei Din. So thinking a great amount about tonight's talk, I'd like to take it from the following vantage point. We're going to divide the talk into two parts, following that which Chazal say, Sur Meira v'asei toiv. First, you got to remove the bad before you could accentuate the good. And I'd like to hopefully accomplish this goal, b'siyata d'shmaya, by taking one word that has the same three letters, ayin, reish, vez, and in tonight's words, giving it three separate meanings. So hopefully that will be an easy way for you to remember what we say tonight. First is Sur Meira, then is Asei Toiv, and I know that there are three ways to translate ayin, reish, vez. Here's the first. Sur Meira means we have to get rid of a certain problem. Right after the Yemei Din, we approach Sukkot, we take the Daled Minim. I once heard in the name of Rav Mordechai Banet of Nitra, an incredible pshat. Did you ever notice something unique? When you take the Daled Minim, 3 of the 4 are spoken about in a very, very endearing way. We speak about the esrog. In fact, people will spend a fortune, and in many cases, rightfully so, for that esrog muhudar. Talk about the lulav. I remember, and I'm certainly not the oldest one in the room, when it came to the lulav, we used to protect it in a plastic case. Then that became a hard plastic. Now there's like a virtual tank to protect your lulav. And hadassim. People will spend money on hadassim as well. But why is it that when you go to buy the Daled Minim, did you ever notice the one who's selling it to you will say, here's the price and I'll throw in the aravos. And after a few days when the aravos have become black, come back to me, I'll give you another one. What did the arava do wrong? There's the first word of ayin, reish, vez, arava. What did the arava do wrong? The way we talk about the esrogim, the lulavim, the hadassim, rightfully so. But why does the arava get the short end of the deal? Rav Mordechai Banet Minitra tells us, because look where the Daled Minim come from, for the most part. Esrogim will get from the finest pardesim, the orchards in Eretz Yisrael, from overseas, thousands of miles away. Lulavim as well, they come in mostly, many come from France and many come from different places in Europe, the finest lulavim. Hadassim as well will be shipped from overseas, some from China, different places in the Orient, but all those 3 I just mentioned, they come from thousands of miles away. You know where many people get their aravos from? Yeah, their own backyard. Many people grow aravos in their backyard, and they simply cut it. Says Rav Mordechai Banet Minitra, that's the answer to the question. The lulavim and the esrogim and the hadassim are spoken about with awe and reverence because the mystique is there. They come from afar. But the arava? In my own backyard? We tend to take that for granted. Those who are nearest to us and those who are dearest to us, we tend to take for granted. And that's why the arava is in my backyard, I'll throw it in. And if after 3 days something happens, I'll give you another one. Because when something comes from far away, there's a mystique, there's an awe, there's a reverence. But those that are closest to us, our spouses, our siblings, the nearest and dearest, we tend to take them for granted. You know what Rav Mordechai Banet of Nitra says about the arava? That's a ginormous mistake. You know why? Because take a look at the Gemara in Sukkah. When the Yom Tov is coming to an end and the Kohanim circle around the Mizbeach, and the Yom Tov is closing, what do they circle the Mizbeach with at the end of the day when all is said and done? It's not the Esroigim, it's not the Lulavim, and it's not the Hadassim. The Gemara says they encircle the Mizbeach with just the Arava. Because at the end of the day, all we have, the nearest and dearest, the Arava in our life. Now, no one should go to their spouse or sibling and say, how's my Arava doing? That's not a good idea. Rabbi say that's where tonight's topic starts. We're looking for that Rabbim that need us, to whom we're indispensable. Look no further than across your kitchen table. Because sometimes the Arava is taken for granted. We're with them all the time. It's interesting, the word family and familiarity have most of the same letters, because with our family we are most familiar. That has a maila, but that has a huge chisaron, because sometimes we take them for granted. And at the end of the day, when the Yom Tov is over and the mystique and the Hadassim and the Lulavim and the Esroigim are no longer in your lives, you can't depend and count on them. You know who you have? The Arava. So in dealing with Sur Meirah, we first have to make sure, like Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said, that the Rabbim that need us, our spouse, our siblings, our parents, our children. We can't begin tonight by looking any further than our kitchen table. Is all in order with the Aravos in our life, those who are nearest and dearest? That's question number one. Because if the answer is no, that's where it starts with. The Rabbim is not the Rabbim that's thousands of miles away. The Rabbim starts with my family. My father, Harav Mordechai Shapiro Zatzal, tells us a fabulous way to be successful in these relationships, these Arava relationships. It says in Pirkei Avos that one of the miracles in the Beis Hamikdash was oimdim tzefufim mishtachavim revachim. Literally, that means that when they stood, it was very cramped and crowded, but when they would bow, there was ample room. Oimdim tzefufim mishtachavim revachim. My father said a gewaldige Wort, 101 in a relationship with an Arava. Oimdim, if you're always going to stand your ground rigidly, I'm right, and you never capitulate, tzefufim, the whole relationship will be miserable, crowded, and cramped. Mishtachavim, if you're willing to bow and bend, hear the other person's point of view, give them the time of day, validate them, then revachim, the whole relationship will be something of revach, a thing of beauty. That's a Vart. Take that with you into Rosh Hashanah. Reb Chaim, I see you like that Vart. Oimdim tzefufim, when you deal with the Arava, those nearest and dearest, we can't be so rigid and not hear the other person's point of view and always putting them down. It will be tzefufim, it will be miserable. Mishtachavim, validate, give them the time of day, show them the love, revachim, that's the ticket. In fact, a little while ago, I saw in a sefer, Umasu Ka'or, a gematria, that I think is going down in my books as one of the most sensational and delectable ones I ever saw. It says in Kairach, Rashi says, what did Kairach do wrong? Shalokach atzmoi litzad echad, which literally means he took himself off to the side and he separated himself from everyone. He put himself on one side. In other words, he didn't get along with the Rabbim, the Tzibur. I saw the following gematria brought down. The proper way to go to any relationship with those Aravos, those in your life, when you approach them, there will be disagreements, there will be issues, there will be different things that come up. You have to realize it's not like Kairach said, there's only one tzad, my way or no way. What? You have to realize, I have a tzad, but so do you. I have to view everything with this tzad and that tzad. And if you do that, the numeric value of the word tzad, tzadi dalid, is 94. A wise person does what I just told you. They face the Arav and they say, this is how I feel, but I hear your point. Tzad and tzad. 94 times 2 is 188. The Hebrew for the word a wise man is a pikeach. Pei kuf ches. It's 188. You know what makes you a pikeach in a relationship? Realize there's my tzad and the other tzad. And I've got to validate it as well. Now here's the thing of beauty. I have to do that, but so do you. I have to view it with a tzad here, and so do you. That means I'm bringing in, so to speak, the power of a pikeach 188. But you must also be a pikeach. You're bringing your own 188. What do you get when you bring pikeach together? 188 times 2, 376. The word shalom, peace, shin lamed vav mem, is 376. I hold that's a gematria. Step number 1 to Sur Meirah, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says, you want to be Zoiche B'din, make sure that people find you to be indispensable. Don't start by looking outside, look inside. It's making amends with a sibling or whoever it might be, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, making sure the spouse is being treated properly. It all begins by valuing the arava nearest and dearest, because at the end of the day, when everything else is gone, you know who will be there for you? The arava. And the first thing to do to make sure, Sur Meirah, that we get rid of this negativity is realize the next time I feel, when she calls me, when he calls me, right away there's an issue. 1 minute. I'm going to be a pikeach. There's my tzad and there's her tzad. Together, that's pikeach. And if you'll do the same, I'll be a pikeach and you'll be a pikeach. 188 times 2 is shalom, 376. That's the way to have and bring peace to the world. It starts with the Sur Meirah. One final note before we speak about the next group that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter might be talking about. Sometimes when we speak negatively of these people in our families, or might be another yid, we're very quick to use a word that's not so nice. Be moichel me. He's a koifer. She's a koifer. A koifer means essentially they deny, they're no good. We're quick to write people off. Rabbi Isai, you know what the root of the word koifer is? When Noach was told to cover the teva, the pasuk says v'chafarta. You should cover it. You know what the root etymologically of the word koifer is? V'chafarta. It's covered over. But the beauty is there. And so the next time we're very quick to turn to someone in an argument and not to hear their point of view, but to stand rigid. I'm right. Tell yourself, really, you think they're a kaifer? Kaifer is from the word v'chafarta. The beauty is covered over. They're a gem. They're a jewel. Every yid is. But sometimes it may be v'chafarta, it may be covered over. I just saw a week ago a vort from the Barditchever Rebbe, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak ben Sarasosh. Imagine taking this into Yontif. In the V'chol Maminim that we'll say in a few days, it says V'chol Maminim, and then the second part of the stanza is Hatoiva Hametiv Laroyim V'latoivim. I know it's a song, but believe it or not, before it was a song, it was actually part of the tefillah. Says, Heilige Barditchever Rebbe, Laroyim V'latoivim, Hatoiva Hametiv Laroyim V'latoivim. Listen to a vort, we should turn to the Rebbeinu Shalom and say, Rebbeinu Shalom, Hatoiva Hametiv Laroyim. If you'll just be good to those who are ra, those who seem to be evil and bad, you'll see V'latoivim. They'll really be good. We ask the Rebbeinu Shalom, Hatoiva Hametiv Laroyim. Look at those that we think are bad. Give them a little parnasa. Give them shalom. Give them gesund. And you'll see v'chafarta. Really, their goodness is covered over. And those that we think are rayim, v'latoivim, they will be, and they are intrinsically good. We have to emulate the ways of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Let's stop viewing people as royim. They're no good. They're a kaifer. You know what? Hatoiva hametiv. Show them a little bit of goodness, a little bit of light, a little bit of love, and those that you think are royim, vilatoivim, they will be oh so good. Now that we've taken care of the business of Sur Meirah, and I will make amends, we will make amends before Rosh Hashanah with an arava, say something we should have said a while ago, fix something we should have done a while ago. We'll do it by realizing I and they will be a pikeach, and that will bring shalom. Now that we've taken care of the arava, let's move on to another root of ayin reish beis, and bring us to the part of after Sur Meirah asay toiv, just to look and to do good. The Radomsker Rebbe says a vort, I believe I said this at the convention a few months ago, the one you referred to. You're looking to have your tefillas answered, is that right? You know what it says in Shir Hashirim? Hashmi'ini es kailech ki kailech orev. We ask Hashem, listen to our voice because we have orev. There's that word again. Ayin reish veis. Sweet, says the Radomsker. No. Don't read the word orev as sweet, but rather as arevus. Arevus means responsibility. The Rav spoke extensively about that earlier. Says the Radomsker Rebbe, you want your tefillas answered? Here's the key. Hashmi'ini es koilech. Do you want to know when I'll listen to your tefillos? Ki koilech orev. If you have a voice of arevus, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh. There's that word ayin reish veis again. Responsibility, arevus. We're living through a time where we want our tefillos answered. Think about what occurred since last Rosh Hashanah. It's a different world after the Har Nof massacre. I landed in Eretz Yisrael for my father's yard site, and it was in the middle of the Levayas from the Kedoshim of Har Nof. A winter where in different parts of Europe there was tremendous anti-Semitism. People went into their Pesach Seder thinking about Reb Gavriel Sassoon. It's a night of V'higadatol Bincha, speak to your family, and he saw 7 empty chairs. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, Hashmi'ini es koilech, I will listen to your tefillos, but here's the catch. Ki koilech orev. You better have responsibility. Kol Yisrael arevim zeh bazeh. We don't live in a bubble. Project Inspire, headed by Reb Chaim Samson, has redefined the word of arevus, of responsibility. You heard from all of the speaker tonight so eloquently. If we would find that one. Rabbi say there's so much on the line. Hashmini es koilech ki koilech arev. And by the way, perhaps the best part, or at least the part I enjoy most of the Vart, says Heilige Radomsker Rebbe. Which of the 3 avos taught us this arevus, getting along, the best? It would be Yaakov Avinu, because we know amongst the Shvatim there was sinna and kinna, hatred and jealousy, and at the end of the day, what does it say about the Shvatim? Yachad Shiftei Yisrael, everybody got along. Yaakov teaches us this getting along better than we learn the most from Yaakov Avinu. Says the Heilige Radomsker Rebbe, what's the name of the tefillah that Avram established? What do we call that tefillah? Shachris. What do we call the name of the tefillah that Yitzchak established? Mincha. What do we call the name of the tefillah that Yaakov established? And don't answer Ma'ariv. Answer Arvis. Yaakov Avinu is teaching us as we approach Rosh Hashanah Tafshin Ayin Vav, did you daven Tfilas Arvis? You know there's a checklist at night. I daven Shachris, I daven Mincha, I daven Ma'ariv, but did you daven Arvis? Might I humbly add, I'm not paskening in front of the Rav Shlita, but while the Gemara in Bracha says, according to one opinion, Ma'ariv might be a Reshus optional, I humbly suggest while Ma'ariv might be optional, Arvis is a choiva, it's obligatory. Now, which person has a right on any given day not to daven tfilas Arvis? Actually, if you think about Project Inspire, they're all about Tfilas Arvis. We know I daven Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv, but did I daven Arvis? There's a world out there waiting for us. And the Rebbeinu Shalom says, Hashmi'ini es koilech, I'll listen, ki koilech arev. Arvis means you show responsibility one yid for another. My father often said over a Maisa, there are few Maisas you'll hear in your life like this one. From the Kapishnitzter Rebbe, Zechusa Yagan Aleinu. It was Yom Kippur afternoon, the Lower East Side. The Kapishnitzter Rebbe was walking during a break, perhaps before Mincha or after Musaf, and he's walking with the Gabbai, the Lower East Side, Yom Kippur afternoon. He sees there's a restaurant, and in the front of the restaurant there's a glass window, and he sees that there is a Yid who is eating in the front of the restaurant, Yom Kippur. The Kapishnitzter Rebbe walks in and he goes over to the Yid and he says, and I quote, "Gujomtif Reb Yid, un es mit Appetit." Eat with a hearty appetite. When they walked out, the Gabbai said to the Kapishnitzter Rebbe, "Rebbe, why do you tell someone es mit Appetit on Yom Kippur?" Listen to what the Rebbe said. On Yom Kippur and Yom HaKadosh, the Rebbeinu Shalom judges us either as a mumar lahachis or a mumar l'teyavain, someone who sinned deliberately and maliciously, or someone who sinned l'teyavain, giving into temptation and desire. When I walked by the restaurant and I saw him eating deliberately, I knew the Rebbeinu Shalom was going to punish him today as a mumar lahachis. I wanted to downgrade him. I wanted him to only be punished as a less severe mumar l'teyavain. So I walked in and I said, "Gujomtif Reb Yid, un es mit Appetit." This way, when he now eats, not deliberately, but with a geschmack and a desire, he'll be punished as the less severe mumar l'teyavain. Rabbi Isai, that's Tfilas Arvis. I have to tell you the truth. Sometimes when I think of the story, I wonder if I would have walked by the restaurant, what would I have said? And unfortunately, I don't think I would have said, "Rabbi Yid es mit Appetit." But maybe after hearing the story, and maybe after learning about Project Inspire, maybe I would have. Because you got to care about everyone. Tfilas Arvis. Hashmi'ini es koilech ki koilech arev. It's all about achrayus. As I said at the convention, everybody has to make sure they have achrayus responsibility. How do you spell the word achrayus? Aleph ches reish yud vav saf. Every one of those 6 letters tell you how to have true responsibility. Aleph is the first letter. Aleph means one. I've got to be responsible and take care of myself. The next letter is a ches. Aleph ches is ach, my brother. The arava we opened up with. You take care of them? The next letter of achrayus is a reish. Aleph ches reish is acher, someone else. You take care of the unaffiliated? The next letter of achrayus is a yud. Aleph ches reish yud. Acharai. Tell someone I'm farleslach. You could follow after me. Let them sense you're the real deal. Either by placing all of the honey bags and the challahs and the sweet things on people's doors. Well, let them see you mean it. In fact, Toronto is launching or has launched their triple play. Now, in baseball, a triple play unassisted is a pretty big deal for those who know what that sports term meant. But I think that it's meaningless when it comes to Toronto's triple play. You know what Toronto's triple play is? And I believe that was the brainchild of Reb Chaim Samson and others. It means before you get to Shabbos Parshas Lech Lecha and invite them to your home for Shabbos, let them see it. Like you heard the packages and the boxes that are made. Invite them and inspire them for Rosh Hashanah. That's the first part. Invite them and inspire them for Sukkot. That's the second part. So that when it comes to Shabbos Parshas Lech Lecha, the Shabbos project that is resounding around the world, that will be the third. That's a triple play. Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, culminating in the worldwide Shabbos project. Don't be left out of the triple play. That's Tfilas Arvis. And so the letter Aleph Ches Reish Yud means Acharai, follow after me because I'm real. What's the next letter? Aleph Ches Reish Yud Vav, Acharav. You know I'll follow after this guy. I see you're the real deal. You walk the walk, you talk the talk, you're sincere. Acharav, I'll follow you. And what's the last letter? Tough. Aleph Ches Reish Yud Vav Saf. The first letter is an Aleph, the last letter is a Tough. That's the beginning and end of the Aleph base, Aleph to Tough. Because you've got to be there for a fellow Yid, beginning to end. Saying that I'll be there for you because you know you daven next to me in shul. We come from the same shtetl. You're part of my milieu. You have the same havara. That's not called achdus. That's called cloning. Truly being there, as you heard in the letter that the Rav read, the person said, if somebody would have just showed me care, looked for me. Aleph to Tov, beginning to end. So they're not exactly like me. They don't have the same background. They don't know the beauty of Shabbos. Aleph to Tov, and that's Achrayas. Aleph to you, Aleph Ches to your brothers, Aleph Ches Reish to Acher, everyone else. Aleph Ches Reish Yud, follow Acharai after me, I'm the real deal. Aleph Ches Reish Yud Vav, Acharav, I'm comfortable with you. Aleph to Tov, beginning to end. That's the way to do it. I mentioned the story a little while ago with Rav Moshe Feinstein. There was a woman, I heard this story from the doctor himself, the son of the lady involved. She needed to take medicine on Pesach for her heart condition. So she, every year, Erev Pesach, would call Reb Moshe and ask him, can I take the medicine? And every year, Erev Pesach, Reb Moshe would patiently explain to her why she could take the heart medicine, why it wasn't chametz, why it was okay. Explain it thoroughly and wish her a good yor, a good yomtiv, every year. This went on for over 20 years, Erev Pesach. And now Erev Pesach's a pretty busy day. Probably the busiest day. For a Rav, exponentially, it's probably, like they say, with the pressure that's just south of the near nuclear explosion in 3 Mile Island about 30 years ago. And for Reb Moshe, Erev Pesach, we can't fathom. The son tells me, one year my mother had gotten a bit elderly and she forgot to call Reb Moshe. Two hours before Yontif, Pesach's to begin, the phone rings in her home and she picks up. And the voice on the other end says, hello, this is Moshe Feinstein calling. I didn't hear from you today to find out about your medicine. I was concerned. Are you okay? When I didn't hear from you, I was worried. Are you all right? And then he went on to reassure her that she could take the medicine, it's not a problem, and again, Vinster on a good yomtiv. Rabbi Isai, do we fathom that story? I know that if I would come home, perhaps I shouldn't say it publicly. And there's a phone call that I had to make, but my wife or somebody will tell me, no, they called and said you don't need to call them, or they forgot to call you. That's like a simcha, that's enjoyable. Reb Moshe on Erev Pesach calls a woman, I didn't hear from you today. Are you all right? I was concerned. Because Reb Moshe understood Achrayas is Aleph Ches Reish Yud Vav Sof, Aleph to Tov, beginning to end. Hashmi'ini es kailech ki kailech orev. You have to have a voice of responsibility. I just want to say one final thought before we go to the third definition of Ayin Reish Beis. What does it take to become this person? What does it take? My father once wondered, how could it be that the Hebrew for the word to be alive is neshama? And the Hebrew for the word to be desolate and void is neshama. One could look in the Haftarah of Parshas Parah and they'll see many times that word. What? They're the same letters, Nun, Shin, Mem, Hey. Virtually identical nekudais. Neshama means to be alive, and neshama means void. Why should I get up in the morning? What's the difference between neshama and neshama? Under the shin of neshama is a patach, which looks like this. Under the shin of neshama is a kamatz. How do you make a kamatz from a patach? A patach is a line across like this. So how do you make a kamatz from a patach? You add a little support underneath. And when you add a little support, you create a neshama. Ask people who have no support. Ask people who would not know that on Purim you hear a Megillah, and on Chanukah you light a menorah, and on Pesach you eat matzah, and on Sukkot you take Daled Minim. And what did we just hear about Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah in Disney World, Rosh Hashanah in hotels all over different European countries. When people have no support, their life is neshama. Show a little support, and you create a neshama. That's all it takes. And I think that's why we heard from a few people tonight, and as well in the name of Reb Noach Weinberg Zatzal, if everybody would find one neshama, we'd rewrite history. It doesn't take something big and grandiose. It doesn't take my entire city and 1,000 families and a mountain that's insurmountable. The difference between neshama and neshama is a little support. If everybody would take upon themselves one yid, one family, one person, history would be rewritten tonight. Everybody has to create a neshama. After all, is that not what Reb Yisrael Salanter said? Ha'etza ha'yechida liskais badinhi lihiyos ish sharabim tzrichem loy. To how many are you indispensable? When I had the privilege of writing this in an article a few months ago, I actually asked these questions, which I'll quickly ask to you. How do you do on the following checklist? To how many people are you truly indispensable? How many people can you say depend on you for chizuk? Huh? How many people count on you for Shabbos and Yontif Suda? And I don't mean when they get called Friday afternoon. How many people count on you to learn with them and teach them more about Yiddishkeit? And their children, if they or the parent aren't there. How many people count on you to help them financially and emotionally? To how many people are you a shoulder to cry on, a listening ear? Do you provide a warm smile or a kind word? And finally, how many people could you honestly say count on you for advice, guidance, inspiration, and compassion? That's a checklist. And the same way a person goes into Yontif with a checklist, I made this for this meal, and that for that meal, and I took the suit to the cleaners, and the car is filled with gas, and I'm ready to go. Ask yourself the checklist that I just mentioned. How many people on Rosh Hashanah are going to say, Ribayna Shalaylam, please grant him a good gebench the yar, I need them. And I can't live without them. No? How many people are you indispensable? For the advice, for the guidance, for the chizuk, financially, emotionally, Yontif, Shabbos, learn with them. That's a checklist. And that's the second definition, arvis. And now for the third and final definition, perhaps the one that we most associate the ayin reish vez with, more than arava, and more than that concept of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh, it's what I said a few moments ago, V'harevna. You know how to do this? The upshot of everything we've said, really everything, the relationships with those nearest and dearest, those with whom you have been in a fight, those unaffiliated, it's all the same answer. Tell him how sweet it is. I believe I heard in the name of our Gadol Hador Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Soll gesund und stark sein. I believe I heard in his name the following question: why is it that in Birchas HaTorah we say V'harivna, yet we know that the Ava Rabbah could also act as Birchas HaTorah if one didn't say the Birchas HaTorah, yet in the Ava Rabbah, or Avas Oilim if you daven Svard, there's such a long list. Lahavinu, lahaskil, lishmoya, lilmoid, ulamed, lishmar, velasais, maybe 10 things long. Why is that list not in the bracha of the Harivna? You know what Reb Chaim said? Because if you have the Harivna and it's sweet, you have everything. If you have the Harivna, by definition you have the lilmoid, lilamed, lishmar, velasais, only when you don't have it. Could we please leave here tonight and go into Yemei Din, Tov Shinai and Vav, showing them the Harivna? There's nothing sweeter. It's that triple play I mentioned earlier, Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, and Parshas Lech Lecha. It's getting involved with Project Inspire. You don't mind if hundreds of us come to you and want to get involved tonight, I'm sure. Bombard Project Inspire more than they were ever given. I want to do. Tell them that. V'harivna, could you please leave here tonight showing somebody how sweet it is? Our family mechutin, Reb Moshe Schmelzer, the Menal of Tel Chicago, has told me the following Reb Moshe story many times. I simply can't get enough of it. The first part of the story is a little bit sad, so I apologize. But years and decades ago, some Bochum decided to make prank phone calls. And the pranks were going to be to different poskim, different gedolim, and fabricate silly halacha questions. One of these boys, it was his turn to call Reb Moshe. It pains me to even say this part of the story. But fasten your seatbelt and listen to the rest. He had to call Reb Moshe. He called about 11 o'clock. Reb Moshe had already gone in. The Rebbetzin said, should I wake the Rosh Hashiva? And the boy who was going to play the prank said yes. Reb Moshe came to the phone and said, hello. He said, excuse me, I have to wash my hands. Netilas Yadayim and make brachos. He then asks Reb Moshe his silly prank shaila. Reb Moshe picked up right away that it's a joke. And so he says to this Bachar, where do you learn? The Bachar, fearing that he would be in trouble, didn't want to answer. Maybe something's going to happen to me. Reb Moshe reassured him, nothing will happen, don't worry. Where do you learn? He tells him. What Gemara are you learning? Tells him. What daf are you on? Tells him. He says, let me ask you a kasha on Tosfos. He asks it to the boy on that page. Asking that kasha on Tosfos to the boy, of course the boy didn't know. You want to know V'harivna? I'll tell you V'harivna. I'll tell you V'harivna. Reb Moshe says, let's learn the Gemara. Of course, Reb Moshe, without taking the Gemara, word for word, Gemara and Rashi. Did you get it? Let's do it again. Any better? Let's do it again. I don't know if Reb Moshe taught him word for word 3 times or 4 times Gemara, Rashi, every single word. Now let's do Tosfos. And he taught him Tosfos. After he instilled in the Bachar V'harivna, look how sweet it is. He then said, now let me ask you the kasha again. And he asked it to the boy, and the boy said, you know, it's a good kasha. That's an unbelievable question. Reb Moshe says, here's what I want you to do. Tomorrow, I want you to go to yeshiva, and when you learn this sugya and Tosfos, I want you to ask your Rebbe this kasha. The next morning, he's in class, and he asks the kasha, and the Rebbe says, that's an unbelievable kasha. Where'd you get it from? He says, from Reb Moshe Feinstein. The Rebbe says, I need to think about it. At the end of the week, after thinking about it for those few days, he comes back and he gives the boy an answer. The boy says, I was so empowered by the sweetness of Torah. I was so empowered by the patience and loving guidance of Reb Moshe that Reb Moshe had the chokhmah, 1,000 psychologists might not think of it. Empower the boy with a question so that the boy can go in, and now all of a sudden, he says to himself, my Rebbe thought about my kasha for almost a week? I mamish had the power of that kasha? The boy turned his life around. And yes, I will tell you, and it's 100% accurate. Maisa shahaya kachaya. The boy today is no boy. He's a choshev, a magid shir in a very prestigious yeshiva gedola in the tri-state area. A prestigious yeshiva in the tri-state area, a choshev, a magid shir. You know why? Because v'harevna. He tasted the sweetness. And he tasted the patience and the guidance of Reb Moshe, and it turned his life around. You know, Rabbi Isai Chazal tell us, Adam la'amal yulad. You know how everybody translates Adam la'amal yulad? People were created la'amal. What's a good definition? To toil. You know how you spell la'amal? Lamed, ayin, mem, lamed. You know what lamed, ayin, mem, lamed really stands for? Lilmoid al minas lelamed. Rabbi Isai, we weren't created to live in our own bubble and cocoon. Adam la'amal yulad stands for lilmoid al minas lelamed. We have to show the beauty. There's a shot from the Radomsker in Pirkei Avos. You know everybody translates that? If you learned a lot of Torah, don't pat yourself on the back and think you're a gift to the world. You were created to learn. You know what the Radomsker says? Anytime you have the word toiv, toiv is Torah. Im lamada Torah harbe. If you're privileged to learn a lot of Torah, al tachazik toiva la'atzmecha. Don't keep all that goodness for yourself. Don't be selfish. Al tachzik toiva. Don't keep the beauty of Yiddishkeit la'atzmecha. Ki lakach natzarta. You were created to spread it. In fact, if you rearrange the letters of the word natzarta, it spells the word tzinairos. Tzinairos is a pipe. Pipe it into another yid. Tell me something. Is there a better definition in the world for Project Inspire than that? I'm sure many people will say there is. I humbly think that was it. Im lamadata Torah harbe. Tell me something. You know in a few days is Rosh Hashanah. Do you know millions don't? Do you know many think there's nothing wrong with eating on Yom Kippur? What are you talking about? Going into a sukkah? What are you going to that hut for on Sukkot? Menorah, Megillah, what's wrong with bread on Pesach? Al tachazik toiva la'atzmecha. Don't keep that goodness and beauty for yourself. You were created to spread it. And that's the way we began tonight's talk. We're looking for judgment on Rosh Hashanah. Says Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, Ki ha'etza ha'yechida liskais badinhi. Let's say those words again. The single greatest piece of advice to be meritorious in judgment is lihiyos ish tzerabim tzrichem loy. Become indispensable to as many as you can. To the arava, to those nearest and dearest, to people that you need to make amends tonight. Kol Yisrael arevim zeh bazeh. Achrayis, Aleph Ches Reish Yud Vav Sav. And what does it take? Neshama. Just a little bit of support. After we've tackled the Arava and we realized, I start with those nearest and dearest. Then I realize Hashmini as Kailech Ki Kailech Arev. I have to have a voice of responsibility. The third definition is the one we mentioned, V'harevna. It's so sweet. It's so sweet. And the sweetness turns lives around. when people will get serious about the triple play of Project Inspire, when people will get serious about the Shabbos project, that which is used around the world, and so many, including Project Inspire, help to promote. The Harevna, show them the sweetness. And that's a way to make sure we're indispensable to people. I just want to end with one Maisa. There was a couple that worked for Lev La'achim, the Kiruv organization, in the northern part of Eretz Yisrael. They did fabulous work. They had a boy who just turned 3. In fact, when I said this over recently, someone who knows the family extremely well added in a very, very, very sad detail. Their 3-year-old, who had had the upsharon in the morning, went to Cheder, and as the day progressed, he wasn't feeling well. And after he went to lie down in Cheder, unfortunately, the 3-year-old was nifter. And this couple that worked for Lev La'achim had to now sit Shiva for their 3-year-old. Someone who knows the family very well said, in Eretz Yisrael, they say that in the morning, on the way to the upshare, they wrapped their 3-year-old in a talis, and at night, by Kvura, they also wrapped their 3-year-old in a talis. By that they mean many have the custom that in the morning, by an upsharon, you wrap in a talis so the eyes don't see anything that's not pure. And they're sitting Shiva. Sometimes people in a Shiva home don't say the brightest things. And that was being kind. The man who's sitting Shiva for his 3-year-old gets a phone call. He comes back and this is what he says. I am currently trying to be makar of 8 boys that don't keep Shabbat. One of the 8 just called, representing the other 7, and said to me, the rabbi, we heard what happened to your 3-year-old. In his memory, I and the other 7, the 8 of us, this Shabbat will keep one Shabbos. This Shabbos for your 3-year-old. He comes back very moved and he shares this with everybody. And someone who did not say something very bright, probably meant no harm, but still, he says to the rabbi, the phone call was nice from the 8 boys. Like, is it such a big deal? They'll keep this one Shabbos and that's it. You know, who says they're going to keep Shabbos again? One Shabbos and they're going to keep Shabbos again? It's nice, but not that lasting or meaningful. Just one Shabbos. Our friend looks at this man and he says, I'll answer your question. You want to know if it's meaningful that they'll keep one Shabbos? Do you know what my wife and I would do, he says, to get our 3-year-old back for one Shabbos? Do you know what we would do so I could feel him holding my hand again, bringing him back from Shul Shabbos day? Or for my wife to see that he'd be bouncing on my knee while we sing Zmiros? You know what we would do to get him back for one Shabbos? You want to know if it's a big deal? We would give up everything to have him back for one Shabbos. And then he turns to the man and says, now the Rebbeinu Shalom is getting 8 children for one Shabbos. 8 of his children back for one Shabbat. You still want to know if it's a big deal? Ask my wife. The Rebbeinu Shalom is getting back 8 children for one Shabbos. That's a big deal. And so through the triple play and approaching the Shabbos project, maybe the Rebbeinu Shalom will get back hundreds of thousands for one Shabbos. It's a big deal. In fact, it's the biggest deal to take into Rosh Hashanah, period. Let's be Zaycha. This is the month, as the Rav said, of Elul, Anila Daidi V'Daidi Li. But if you spell those letters backwards, Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed, spell it backwards, it's Lamed, Vav, Lamed, Aleph. You know what that spells? Lule. You know what Lule means in English? Lule, if only. Lule, If only. You know who says that? People who live with regret. If only I would have done that sooner. If only I would have called him. If only I wouldn't have said that to her. If only I would have listened to the speech. There are some people who live their entire life Lule-esque in nature. They live with regret. If only I would have done this. If only I would have taken it serious. Don't let this month end as Lule. A month where we regret, I didn't. Some people live their whole life that way. As this month comes to an end, we better make sure that it's not the month of Lule, but it's the month of Elul. Ani l'daidi v'daidi li. May it be the will of the Ribbono Shel Olam that because we came together tonight on behalf of Project Inspire, and we will make sure, number one, the first Ayin Reish Vez is the Arava, I will care for those nearest and dearest. The second Ayin Reish Vez is Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh, I have to show responsibility. And the last Ayin Reish Vez is V'harivna, how sweet it is. Let's take that schus into Yom Hadin. That's a big deal. Let's take what Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says to heart. You want to be meritorious in judgment? Become someone that you are indispensable to people, that they will in shul say, I need that person. And in that schus, that the rabbim need us. Our families need us. Our neighbors and co-workers need us. The unaffiliated need us. May it be the will of the Ribbono Shel Olam that we never experience Lule, but Elul. And in that schus, may the Ribbono Shel Olam grant every one of us, because we are so indispensable and needed, because of the chizuk we provide to others, may we be zeichet to have a ksiva v'chasima tova, a gebenchte gesunte yor, and a year filled with only Yiddish and nachas to be enjoyed gesundheit.